Thank you for joining us. My name is Matt Johnson. I'm a capital project manager with the Montgomery County Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, we cannot make the microphone work, so I'm going to try and project as best I can, and Dan will as well. This is Dan Everett with Parker Rodriguez Architects. He's going to give the presentation. I'm going to introduce things. And if you have questions, we'll take those at the end. These boards will remain up after the presentation, so you can come up and have a look. We are also joined by some colleagues from Montgomery County Parks. I don't know if they want to be incognito or not, but but this is Tricia McManus from Montgomery Parks, and we're not here to talk about the park, but since we're adjacent to the park, they are observing and participating with us on that presentation. So we're here this evening to talk about Newell Street. I'm sure you're all familiar with Newell Street. I'm sure most of you are living or working close to Newell Street. And we want to just talk about what the future might hold. This is my contact information. You can find it also on the project webpage. Feel free to email me or telephone me with any questions or comments you have about the project. This is just a facility planning study. So we're just looking at what the possible future might look like. But there's currently no money in the budget for any design work or any construction work. So anything you see here is for the purpose of sort of determining what generally should the future of Newell Street look like, not this specific design or this specific design, or, you know, is the street going to be 20 feet wide or 21 feet wide, or where's this bench going to go? We're not at that stage yet. We're just looking conceptually at what's the direction that the community wants us to go with Newell Street. And I will point out that we don't have a poster up here that says leave it alone, but no build is always an option, right? Leaving it exactly the way it is today is an option, but you know what that looks like, so we're not showing it with a display board, but that is always an option. So we did have a community meeting. I'm not going to read all this text, but this presentation is available on the website if you want to go look at it. Back in October, we had a community meeting, not in this building, but in the building next door, which unfortunately was not available this evening. And we got feedback conceptually from the community on some ideas. And then we took those ideas, we refined them a little bit, and we did some more design work to kind of look at what the different options could be. Again, we don't have any design money. There's nothing concrete, nothing has been decided on. What you tell us at this meeting and after this meeting will impact what the future of Newell Street might look like, because we will take this feedback to help us determine what the preferred, community preferred alternative is. It will be up to the elected officials, the county executive and the county council, to find money to put in the budget to actually do any design work or any construction work. That's not in the budget at this time. So this is the context. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the area, but we do have Newell Street, the actual study area here, highlighted in orange. We have the Argent Apartments, that's where the number 7 is, across the street. We have Acorn Park here, which is where the original Silver Spring from Silver Spring is. Number 1 here, and we have some other areas that are highlighted. Again, this presentation is available on our website if you want to look at things in more detail. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan now to take over, but I'll be here to answer any questions at the end as well.
Yeah. So kind of start with what Matt was saying. First of all, nice to be here with everybody. So I remember some faces from last time. But we do want to be very clear. So what we're studying is what's in the right-of-way up here. So it's really this study. It just so happens that Argent Park and Newell Street and Acorn Park and this kind of the private walk in here, they all tie together. So we're trying to look at this comprehensively and what could be. And so we kind of took a step back. We said, what are different options that would make this better? What we kind of heard from the first presentation was people liked the idea of this being a park. It worked well during COVID. Families came out, there were kids out. You could actually use these spaces. Right now, you kind of have 2 small parks divided by a street. It doesn't feel safe for kids, doesn't feel like it's usable or user-friendly. And you kind of see that in COVID, it got used. And now that the street's open, it's no longer used as much, or certainly not to the extent that it was before, and certainly not by kids, I think. So we kind of stepped back and we said, there's a lot of opportunities here, and I think we presented that last time, was there's a lot of opportunities to in the park. Currently, Montgomery County Parks has a plan for the park, and they obviously had to work within the constraints of Acorn Park. And there wasn't, the ability to kind of extend out into Newell Street or do some of the other, more interesting things that we see as opportunities here. This will all get coordinated with Montgomery County Parks. Again, it's kind of, let's open our eyes and see what the possibilities are, and then we can kind of work, together with Parks and, with MCDOT, and they'll come up with a final design at a later date. These were the concepts we've presented before. You can kind of see one was kind of that no option and doing minimal impact. One was, let's close down the street and, kind of link. Oh no, these are kind of context, but yeah, circulation-wise through the park, it's separated. You have the street that, separates the two parks. Street section through it, you can kind of see what happens here. Right now we have 2 lanes of traffic and a turn lane, or 2 lanes of traffic, depending on where you kind of cut that section through that. So it's a lot of pavement, especially where there's the turn lane, and it also creates a very large intersection, which I think is kind of the thing that makes it this entire kind of environment at the intersection inhospitable. You've got 2 streets coming together, and you have some kind of unclear traffic patterns, and I think that's hard for people to navigate. So this is another opportunity to kind of clean up some of that traffic pattern, which is I think where MCDOT said, hey, maybe we can do something here and make this better. These are the concepts we presented before. So concept 1 was like a one-way shared street with bike lanes. One was kind of close it and kind of have shared bike lanes in their street with a one-way. This was a pedestrian street with bike lanes through it, and one was let's do a full park. And so you'll kind of see shades of these in all of the concepts to kind of develop it, because there are, we don't know that we can just close the street yet. There's a lot more study that needs to just go in from transportation and more community input. So after that first meeting, we heard a lot of things that people liked the idea of this closed street. In addition, there was the idea of just making a park, but also some people said, well, it is kind of nice to have some paved area for kids to ride bikes around, and to have other opportunities. Maybe farmers market can set up. So I think we wanted to kind of look at all different options as we go through this. I'm not going to read through all this, but here's kind of a summary of what we heard and kind of the reactions to the different scenarios. And I'll let you kind of go through that, but it's in large part kind of what we said. People like that, but there was some concerns about totally closing off. Some people would be okay with like a partial closure, but I think that's to be determined. So the proposed schemes we have here kind of just to spur discussion. So this was kind of the permanent closure, link Argent Park and Acorn Park across the street with some different scenarios. This was, keep narrow Newell Street to like one way for cars. Another one was, narrowing Newell but keeping it two way with the bike lanes. And then there's kind of a temporary closure. Just use it, as a keep the ability to have the street open. And then there's the no build option, which is, is always an option, especially if there's not funding. So this kind of we kind of took our hats off and we said, what if, we tried to use the language of what's already out there in terms of the big sweep that comes through Argent Park, used as a connecting element to the Acorn Park, kind of celebrate Acorn Park that's kind of constrained on this side with existing street, keep the spring, and then use some of what Montgomery Parks came up with and kind of bring that walkway into the spring. And this kind of becomes the nexus of this. And then there's another walkway that kind of leads out. We end up with, a nice open play field. And then we were looking at maybe doing a little play space for kids up here. So this has become kind of a, I don't want to say a tot lot, but, we're doing a lot more kind of natural play or creative play for kids. And then this lawn here is actually part of a fire lane. So we need to provide fire lane access to the Argent, but we're disguising that with like a turf overlay that fire trucks can drive on, but most of the time you're just going to see grass.
And I just want to jump in real quick and note that these concepts within the park property are only illustrative. They're meant to show what possibly could happen, but anything that happens inside the park would be the responsibility of parks. We would work with Montgomery Parks. We only control the street space. So, but this is meant to show what a potential future could look like if we were combining these three spaces into one cohesive space. But again, any designs you see in the park space should be considered conceptual only and would require approval from Montgomery Parks and the Planning Board as well. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that.
One thing we did in all these schemes is we kept the sidewalk, for the most part, the existing sidewalk on Newell Street, and kept the street trees within there. We created a sidewalk on one side, and we created kind of a bike path on the other, and combined some seating, kind of to be worked out a little bit. But this was in trying to unify some of the existing design, as well as connecting to the adjacent Ardent Park, kind of make it a cohesive space. Here you can see the circulation through the space, see the historic spring, kind of the play space. So there's lots of circulation through the park, and it kind of pulls people in. Right now, I think there's a lot of people walk along the space of the building. We also want to get people a little bit further away from all the murals. You can't quite appreciate them if you're up so close. So I think being able to kind of step back and see that was another consideration. Again, saving the large trees that are within the space and the street trees. Here's kind of that fire lane I was alluding to. That's their fire department connection. We need to keep that just as a functional aspect of this. Option 2 kind of played on the some of the concept in the first one, but the one thing that you just don't quite get or see in the space is this idea of its silver spring and the spring that comes out. And one thing is, this is really a well right here, that it sits in. So we were looking at, and there's stairs that come down to it, and you walk into it, but it doesn't have the same connotation as it once did. And you read about, when they first saw the spring and they saw the mica coming out, and it was just this beautiful thing. So we thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to do something really bold and, bring the spring out and kind of create a feature out of it. It can become part of the stormwater management kind of feature, and it kind of just alludes to this idea of the spring. It makes a bigger deal out of it, and really you could see the idea of the spring running out, and you can kind of terminate it over here within the street. But the low point of the street is in here, so it kind of gives a reason to why there's a low point in the street. And then similar to the previous schemes, the Acorn would sit above it as was originally founded. There's a little plaza next to it. There's some nice seating areas. This is more similar to the walkway that's out there today. And again, preserving the street trees. And then the existing sidewalk is preserved on this walkway over here. Ardent Park comes in. Then we kind of created a gathering space that could be a little bit more hardscape on this side, which would be nice. And then one thing that's nice is this kind of dips down, so it kind of sits in a nice little little dell, I would call it, within here that it just kind of creates a nice setting for that park, and it separates it from the east-west highway out here. So I think that could actually be there's an opportunity to kind of provide that separation, keep pedestrian traffic out, but still provide ease of access into the park for residents and people in the neighborhood. These were just ideas that we do different things with like a little bit of terracing, provide some kind of informal seating within that, as opposed to just like a big lawn. So there's different ways to kind of enjoy that are kind of more formal with bench seating and less formal with kind of some terrace seating. And then of course that would tie into the fire lane that we'd have to preserve on the side. So I'll kind of go through these quickly. The diagrams are just meant to kind of articulate kind of circulation and the spring and the Acorn, and then some of the other use areas within that. Concept 3 was to preserve kind of the one-way street through that could be used, and also preserve a bike lane, a kind of a dedicated bike lane through it. So you still have circulation. It would be right at the existing curb where the existing trees are. We try to make, knit this across as much as possible. It's almost like we call it a Wooner, which is a shared street. So it's a very slow street, and people, you almost don't feel comfortable driving in it, but it allows people, to have access through there. And I think that's something it require a lot of study with MCDOT, but you kind of have this shared street, and the closest thing is if you've ever been down to the wharf and there's the drive that goes along the waterfront. It's actually open, and especially early in the mornings, and it's kind of this funny little street, and you can actually park on it in the mornings. But that would be kind of the idea, is that it's a street that provides access, but it's really just, if it's convenient, because you're probably gonna have to, wait for people to cross, and it be narrow, and feel like the bikes would have more right to be there than maybe a car, but still keeps it open as a fire lane, et cetera. Then we kind of picked up on this idea of, the spring, and tried to express that in kind of this meander of a spring in the remainder of the roadway. We could this could be temporary. These could be removed in the future as planters, and so you could still, it's kind of it utilizes the street, but it's more of like a design street. And if in 20 years they wanted to open the street again, we could do that. So these would be designed to be kind of removable and not such a big impact. But then the rest of the design kind of ties in, and some of what Montgomery Parks had done with the walkways and the way they tie in, it actually allows you to kind of move into the park more, and it makes more sense, just gives it some breathing room. Here's kind of those examples of the planters that could go in, and then they could be removed if they needed to be in the future. And this is these planters are not just something you're going to move in like a day. It's something that it could go in today. You could add pattern to the street. It could be, you could also have the bike lanes to it, but it doesn't feel like it's a roadway just converted. It's more of an impact than that, but also provides a lot of seating and just opportunities for people to kind of enjoy the space. And I think something we could also see. Maybe the road's open for a certain time and then it's closed when on weekends or something, or in the evenings when residents might use the space. Here's kind of the idea of kind of the circulation of the water and carrying out that concept, and again trying to tie into this idea that it's a spring. It's the historic nature of this site. This next study, we tried to utilize this edge of the street and narrow it, but and then provide a lot of park seating, but also keep the street, but kind of interrupt the street and make it not feel like such a like another neighborhood street. There's lots of banding on it. Allows people to kind of maybe cross the street. Again, kind of that Wooners idea, but allowing two-way traffic. And then bike circulation through. You can see the additional seating within the park, and then again, this is kind of trying to utilize what Montgomery Parks had done as part of their design to make the park better, but then kind of completing that edge that really was very hard to do with with the limited space that is available on this side of Acorn Park. And some of this idea of kind of furniture, this is a little more temporary, but there's lots of options to kind of divide space and separate you from the roadway. Again, that circulation. And then this idea of the fire lane. Again, the fire lane in this one could actually, the fire truck could go through. But I think there's still opportunities to bring a farmer's market in and really program it in other ways, with maybe temporary closures. And this last one is very, well, actually this is just, oops, maybe an extra slide here. This scheme was actually very similar to the previous scheme. Option 5 is probably the most, keeping the street, but still kind of providing some paint. Really not doing too much to the roadbed at all. This is probably the closest to kind of the no-build scenario, but doing, minimal intervention in the street, a little bit of, street furniture along the edge, at the bike lane, doing bike lanes on both sides here, and then creating a very narrow street in the middle. Again, with these schemes, it was hard to kind of provide that connection between Argent Park and Acorn Park. I think it's an enhancement for Acorn Park, but maybe a half measure on some of these. So I'll kind of circulate through these fairly quickly. They're somewhat similar, but so option 1 brought the park all the way across, and I'm just going to step up here. So if you look at option 1, this is really park from Argent Park all the way to the building wall, and this is all green. The fire lane that we're keeping would just be like grass. So you really perceive this as one large space. This one was similar, but we're again trying to emphasize the Silver Spring and create a low point in here and kind of give a reason, that you could imagine when this was first founded, that water flowed out of the spring and it flowed out in, and you could see the kind of the reason for Silver Spring, instead of it just being in a well. This one keeps the street, but does more of an intervention with some of that larger furniture and kind of picking up on the stream and really making the park as wide as we could possibly make it, but providing a vehicular lane through. This one keeps the street as a definitive street, adds this edge to the Acorn Park, so it enhances Acorn Park, but it doesn't really connect these parks, which I think is kind of the problem I think that we saw last time. This keeps 2 lanes, keeps a bike lane, and we're also keeping the curbs for the most part. So it's much less of an intervention. It's kind of what we did during COVID, but with a little bit of more of an enhancement that makes a permanent, closure of the street. And again, you could close this for a fair, but I think it's largely the street is open, but with enhancements. And that's kind of a step back from just keeping it as it is or no build scenario.
And that's what this scenario is showing, right? This is showing it with the planters moved out so that the street's blocked. So this would be a scenario where the street is there, but some event is happening and we've closed it, for the day or for the weekend or whatever. That's what this concept is showing, is the moving of those planters to block the street. But that would not be a full-time closure. I think that's something that could be determined later. These are just concepts. They're not. The idea is to kind of figure out, does Newell Street need to be 3 lanes wide, or could we make it a little bit narrower? If it was just 1 lane wide, we could use that other space to expand the park. Which direction it goes is something that would be determined at the design process, which is not funded. You might have come in later, but the design process is not funded yet. So it could be either direction. If you have a thought on which way you would like it to go, would be a great comment for us to write. I want to get to the presentation slides first, and then we'll take more questions. We're almost done here.
Yeah. So here you can see kind of some of the larger planters that can get moved in, and then like Matt was saying, they can get moved out into the street to kind of close that off here. So this idea of we'd have movable planters, kind of akin to that. They definitely become traffic barriers within that, but then you also have other seating that kind of gets positioned in. These are just concepts, and then you can have some other permanent seating along that edge that kind of enlivens it. But here you can see we're trying to create like a promenade on one side and then still have the street open on the other. All of these, we tried to facilitate as much circulation as possible. I think with the street scenarios, we lose that ability to cross the street. And that's really kind of the shame of all of this, is that you just are not able to kind of knit it together the same way. But I think it's a public process. There's a lot needs to be done. A lot needs to be done, from a political level, from a funding level, and it's just to kind of give ideas. And if you can't see a way that it could be used, you really don't know what the possibilities are. So these were just, we tried to make them as varied as possible, just to give feedback, and then we look forward to hearing your comments.
So I don't want to take too many questions because we want to give you all a chance to come up and talk to us one-on-one and look at the display boards. But if there are maybe 3 or 4 questions, right here.
Can you just clarify on number 5? I think some of us were maybe a little confused. Is that one lane or going either direction? Or
Yeah.
Is it one lane? Or
No,
is
this
it
is
2
2
lanes?
lanes.
One going.
This is 2 lanes. So this is leaving the curbs where they are right now. So the
Okay,
road,
so it's just
the
the-
asphalt is the same. And so let me repeat the question for the people who are watching later. The question was, how many lanes are here in option 5? This is leaving the curbs alone. There would be 1 lane in each direction and then a bike lane. So instead of having a separate left turn lane at East West Highway, there would be a single lane approach and there would be bike lanes on either side. That's the difference. And that kind of space, could be more easily closed, as Dan was just saying. Yeah, right here.
I've never done one of these before, so just to clarify, the way to officially submit one's opinion is to come up and talk to you guys after.
You can certainly talk to us. If you have comments, I would really encourage you to write them down and email me, matt.johnson@montgomerycountymd.gov. This is on the website as well, and you should have gotten you probably got a postcard if you live around here. That link to the website's on there. That's the best way, because if you talk to me, I'll do my best to remember what you say, but my memory's not perfect, and a lot of people are going to talk to me after the meeting. So we also have comment cards in the back as well that Suhong here has. So if you want to leave comments here today, you can do that, or you can go home and think about it and write it in the blue shirt there. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I arrived a little late and I missed a couple of presentations. Which one of these proposed scenarios completely blocks traffic on Newell Street the way it was in 2020 and 2021?
Could you repeat the question?
Which option
Yes.
closes the whole traffic?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. If I forget, please ping me, so I'll do that for the camera. So the question was, which option closes Newell Street to traffic like it was during the COVID shared street period? So this matrix shows what attributes are for each of the options. Now, some of these options fit into more than one category because of the way things are arranged, but a permanent closure of the street where we remove the street, the asphalt's not there anymore, and it's all one space. Options 1 and 2 illustrate that. Option 3 is where we keep the street open, but we narrow it, so it might only carry traffic in one direction. So the street's narrower, the park can be expanded by moving into that space, but not completely. Options 4 and 5 keep Newell Street open in a narrower configuration than it is today. And option 5 has the possibility of being closed temporarily for events, but not permanent closure. And then, of course, since you came in late, I did make the point that the no-build option is always an option, right? There's not. It's not like you guys have to pick the one that you don't like. If you don't like any of them, you can say leave it alone, don't do anything. That's always an option as well. We don't have a board showing that because you know what the street looks like, but that is an option. Right here.
Have you been able to study, or would there be, I know it depends on funding items, a way to study of if the traffic signal can be optimized as sort of, maybe it's a weird intersection now with the 3 ways, you have Blair Mill right there. I would think there's a way to close it all off, which, as you've heard from me before, we'll hear from you again, I would prefer, right? While without having much of an impact on traffic flow, given the herky-jerkiness, for lack of a better term, there is now. Is that a thing you can
Yeah, so
or is that in the future?
the question is, can we optimize the traffic signal operations at East West and Newell and Blair Mill? Because it's a weird signal because we have the 4 legs, but the 2 of the legs aren't across from each other, so they can't operate at the same time. That would be something that would happen during the design process, the specifics of that. But what I can tell you is if Newell Street were closed altogether and that leg didn't exist for cars, the signal would operate with more time for everybody else, right? So that would probably mean less delay for Blair Mill. It would probably mean less delay for East West Highway. Now, if you're trying to go down Newell Street, you have to drive around the block, that might mean more delay for you specifically, but that signal would operate more effectively. Also, if one of the options were for Newell Street to be one way, going away from if it was to be going away from the intersection, that would also simplify signal operations. If it was still approaching the intersection, if it was one way going into the intersection, it would still have to have that extra phase. But yes, the more phases you have, the longer that signal delay is going to be. I'm going to take one last question, and then we'll let you all come up and talk to us one-on-one right here.
Sure, thank you. Just a comment, really. I think that you know that there's a lot of careful thought that has gone into this. There is something that's completely unknown that's going to have a very big impact on Newell Street, and that's what the development at 8001 will eventually be. So I think any sort of consideration of what happens at the intersection that we're discussing today, and that piece of street, I feel that it's premature, and I think it's not fair to the people that live along Newell to go ahead and make a decision about this street that's permanent without considering what's going to happen at 6001. That's my comment.
So the comment was, we don't know what's happening at the future development at 8001, sorry. 8,000. And this is premature. So what I'll tell you, that's a good question to segue into what the schedule looks like. So as I mentioned, there's no funding for design or for construction. The County Council just adopted the FY25 to FY30 budget in May, 2 months ago, and it became effective on July 1st, which was last Friday. The earliest that any money could possibly be added to the budget would be in the off-year cycle next spring, but it's very unlikely that money would be added. It's usually added the CIP is usually updated every 2 years. There isn't a mid-year or a mid-cycle update that happens every year, but it's usually pretty minor changes or something that's like really politically, popular. So I doubt that any money would be added to the budget.
But there's a funnel toward a decision here that I think is inappropriate without knowing what's happening at 8001.
Well, let me just finish this response here, and you can feel free to come talk to me afterwards. The earliest that money could be added for design really would be in the budget that starts July 1st, 2026, which is 2 years away from now. But that's the earliest it could possibly happen. Usually when new projects are added to the CIP, they don't get added in the first year of the CIP. They usually get added later on. So that we could be talking 3 or 4 years before design funding is actually put into the budget. And it may never get put into the budget, right? There may never be a change here. So we live in a county that's constantly changing. And I've worked at MCDOT for about 8 years now, going on 9 years. And every time I do a project, someone says, but there's going to be this development that happens. Why can't we wait until after that happens? Well, the thing is, as soon as that development happens, something else is about to come down the pike. There's never going to be a time where Silver Spring is completely fully formed and it's just done, and we know what it's going to look like. There's always going to be something coming down the pike. When this goes to design, careful consideration will be given, and also when 8001 comes in for its development approvals, the planning department will give careful consideration to what Newell Street is planned to look like, what it does look like. And there is the possibility that 3 or 4 years from now, if design funding is added, that we may say, we know that the community wanted it closed, but things have changed and we don't think that's the best approach and we want to do something different. That's also possible. But the point of this facility planning study is to look at what the possibilities are and what the direction the community wants to go in is. And Patricia, did you want to add anything?
Yes, thanks, Matt. Actually, Jim Chan and I are here with Parks, and we just thought we wanted to give you an update. We have another new park on the other side of the brick company building that is in planning and design, and it's going to go to construction very soon. So we just thought there's going to be a lot more active amenities in that park, and I just thought we'd give an update on what's going to be in that park as we think about some of these options for this park. So
If you don't mind, if you're going to give a longer one, I'll give you the microphone so we can get it on the recording, if you don't mind coming up. That's okay? All right, okay.
Good news. Finally, we bought a 1-acre property in the neighborhood. And this property, we're working very hard to develop this brand new urban park that will have a lot of active program, places for people to gather. So included in the program, we have a picnic terrace, we have a promenade, we have game area, have a small dog run, a great lawn, playground, fitness area, and barbecue. actually went through 2 rounds of historic preservation review. So any new proposed feature have to be in tune to rehabilitate and enhance the historic features. And I really applaud DOT for initiating this effort. We actually thought of bringing more open space, incorporate, expand the park and all that. But back then, we have a lot of constraints. But I just want to let you know, we're working very hard on this, and we hope to, and you might have seen the park is under demolition. So we're trying to resolve some existing site issues, some environmental issues. And once that's clear, the project will be out for bid and start construction, hopefully late summer or early fall, and will likely take about a year. And we're very excited about it. This is a priority, and there will be a lot of nice things in the park for you.
Thanks. So I'm going to end the group session now, but if you have any questions or comments that you didn't get a chance or you didn't feel comfortable raising, come talk to us one-on-one. If you're with the staff, raise your hands. We have Suhong in the back, me and Dan, you know. We also have Katie from our consultant Mercado, who can potentially answer some questions, and I'll just throw my boss under the bus here, Michael Mitchell in the back, but he doesn't really know that much about the project, so don't bother him. And with that, we also have Darcy Buckley from the planning department who's here as well. So, and of course our colleagues from Parks, if you have questions about the proposed park that's being built a block away from here, you can talk to them about that as well. So thank you for coming. I know it's a really hot evening tonight. We really do appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing from you. Again, the comment deadline, I'm going to put my contact information back up real quick. The comment deadline is Friday, July 26th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. So get those comments in. You can mail them or email them. We prefer email, but if you feel more comfortable sending them in the postal mail, you could do that as well. That address is available on the website. It's not on this slide, but it's available on the website. So thank you very much.
One last thing. We have some dots that you can put on preferred schemes. So we have red you don't like it, and green if you do. And also we have some post-it notes you can write, maybe a comment or two about it. But if anything longer, please send an email to Matt.
Thank you.
Yeah.